Yes, it was definitely physically demanding. Probably more so for John. He had to go through a lot of preparation to look, like he was dying.
Yeah, I had lost about 20 pounds for the role, and maintaining it was quite a feat. Like you just said, there's a lot of physicalness in our characters climbing up the mountain and stuff. And I mean, Woody, he's in great shape, so I had to rely a lot on him carrying me.
Yeah. I didn't want to have to say that.
I kept asking Woody if he was afraid of heights before we got to the mountains, and he said no. And I said, why not? He said, well, it's not my time. I said, but what if it's John's time? And he just laughed.
Would you care to expand on the approach, your approach to landscape?
Well, I think that here the landscape is one of the actors. I think the actors in this film, probably in more than any other film that I've made, engage the actors directly, and they engage it in a very direct and physical way. And I think it affects not only their performance, but it affects how the audience, I believe, perceives the film itself.
If I may build up on this gentleman's question about the landscapes are so spectacular that one can imagine an extreme quality of silence in those landscapes. Yet there's a lot of music at times. Could you expand, if you so desire, on the use of the music in this film?
Well, I'm so happy with the music. I'm so happy with what Maurice Jarre did, and so pleased to have worked with him. I've wanted to work with him for so many years, and it provided me with a kind of link to David Lean, because so many of the crew and people that I know in the business, including the late, very great Robert Bolt, have worked with David, and I felt Maurice was a kind of link to that age of filmmaking, which has gone. And I think in this movie, Maurice has returned real live music grandly to the screen and done away with synth scores. I love what he's done, and I think that his music doesn't simply underline the obvious, but deepens what is already there. Makes it more, makes more of what's there, I should say, and deepens the drama.
Question over there, and then over there, then over here.
Okay, John Saad from MTV Lebanon. It's a question for you, Michael. We've noticed how nature is important for you. Both actors had problems in the real life, and they tried to find the cure in nature. Why nature is so important for you?
Well, it's part of what we are. We do live in a landscape. We don't often look at it. We are often, more often than not, unaware of it. And Woody and John play two city people who are not usually exposed to landscapes of this scale. So we begin the story in a rather claustrophobic, high-tech kind of environment, and we end up on a mountaintop at practically 14,000 feet, not meters, feet. So it's a physical journey for them, a journey of exploration and discovery of the space of America, the American West, as well as the spiritual journey, if you like, within. There's a discovery of everything that's around them, and I think that has a profound effect on what they do and how they interact.
Question over there. Then monsieur.
Bonjour, Myriam Rambaud pour le journal Mon Quotidien. Vous venez de le dire, c'est un film, vous avez fait un voyage initiatique, vous avez voulu raconter un voyage initiatique. Est-ce qu'il n'aurait pas été plus facile peut-être de faire un film à huis clos, quelque chose d'intimiste? Or vous choisissez le parti de tourner dans des grands espaces et en plus dans des lieux mythiques. Est-ce que c'était un parti pris dès le début? Donc ça c'est première question pour Michael Cimino. Et peut-être une seconde, mais après?
Un instant, before you answer that, Michael, would the people who are equipped with cellular phones please turn them off? Ceux qui ont un téléphone cellulaire, soyez assez gentils pour les éteindre.
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. For one thing, the places are not mythical places. They are very real places. They're places that you can, or anyone here, can actually go to. And
J'avais dit des endroits mythiques, c'est-à-dire que les
Mythical.
grands espaces,
Yeah,
et non pas mystiques. Hein,
Non, non,
mythiques.
il a dit mythique.
So they're not. They are real. They are real spaces of the American West, and one encounters tourists in these areas from all over Europe, from Germany, from Sweden, from France, especially. So they are not. They are tangible. They are places that people go to, but they are not places that people, unless they make an effort to see them, would normally see in the course of a lifetime. And I think part of the function of any movie is to take you to new places and to show you places that you haven't seen and make a unique experience, a unique journey, if you will, rather than to see the same tired old things you've seen 100 times before.
Et la deuxième partie de votre question?
Ça s'adresse plus particulièrement à John Soda. Je voulais savoir comment il s'était préparé à son rôle. Je crois qu'il a dû apprendre un petit peu les gestes et le langage des délinquants, donc des grandes zones. Comment il s'est préparé, tout simplement?
Michael had hired a guy by the name of Marvin Watkins, who pretty much lived that life as a young kid himself. He had been involved with the gangs and had been shot himself, and had seen the life that Blue had seen. And I myself, I took what I had seen in my life growing up on the streets in Jersey, and I incorporated that with what Marvin had, and we combined it together, and we just we visited places in South Central. You know, we hung out. I met with a lot of gang members. I talked to a lot of gang members, and just got to see how they lived their lives. You know, and most of these young kids, because that's what they are. Most of these young kids, I mean, what they see in their lives would probably destroy anyone else. I mean, most people can't handle what these kids handle. So basically, I just wanted to see, and I basically tried in a short time to live what they lived, and like I said, just put it into my character. So that's part of how I train for my character.
Monsieur?
My name is Juan Castro from Telefe Noticias Argentina to Michael Cimino. 2 days before, in this very same room, Bernardo Bertolucci said that Stealing Beauty was like his first movie. The Sunchaser, if we look at your filmography, is like your first movie too. So, would you go for the Palme d'Or or the Camera d'Or?
I'm not as sophisticated as Bernardo. I'm not sure.
Question, monsieur?
Question from C33 Lebanon to Mr. Woody Harrelson. As the movie goes on, your character begins to get to know the other character and begins to change his point of view about him and about his goal. Do you think that's because of the interaction between the two characters, or just because you're far away from the city and the problems of the city and the usual life?
Well, I think it's both, you know. Certainly if we were still in the city, we wouldn't have had that kind of interaction because we're in two entirely different worlds. But definitely, I guess if you spend enough time with someone, you know, even if he's your captor, you know, you're going to start to feel some compassion. And it's, you know, I think that's what the film is about, the coming together, the merging of these two different worlds, and in the with the backdrop of this extraordinary nature, you know.
Is either of you into Native American culture and art, or was it any sort of discovery, or mythology, or religion?
Well, myself, I mean, I never, I'm not going to say that I was completely into it, but I've always had an interest. I think it's amazing, the type of culture, you know, I mean, it's so different, but yet it's more of a relaxing type of state of mind in the belief of your own spirit, you know, and I've always been interested, and because of the film, I became even more interested. So I've been reading a lot more about it and just trying to see what else I can learn.
Mr.
Yeah,
Harrison?
I've definitely been into it, you know. I mean, I guess not as deeply as some, but, you know, I had a place in the Malibu colony, and I was the only house with a teepee in my backyard. And, you know, I've done peyote ceremonies, and I've had a lot of time on reservations. And even actually when I go back, I'm going to hopefully the first planting of industrial hemp in the United States will be at a Navajo reservation in Arizona. So, you know, it's a cool thing for me.
Question ici.
Yes, Bruce Kirkland of the Toronto Sun. A question for Woody Harrelson. In a lot of the movies you've been in the past, you've played street-type people. And obviously this is a bit of a departure in that sense. Is this a conscious attempt to break out of a typecasting? Is it just the fact of working with Michael Cimino? Can you explain your motivations in playing a man of this nature?
Well, you know, initially I was at Arnaud Milchan's place outside of Paris, and he gave me the script and said, I think you're going to like this. We were here for another movie, and I read the script and really loved it. And, of course, I met Michael. We had dinner and got drunk together one night, and we were bonded. But to tell you the truth, I was a little nervous. I had a lot of trepidation about playing anything other than poor white trash because I didn't know if I could do it, you know. But Michael told me I could and directed me through it, so hopefully it came out okay. You be the judge. Yeah.
I never had any doubts.
Question dans la salle. Monsieur?
Well, another question for you, Woody, from Lebanon. You've been working with so many great
Directors. Thank
yes.
you.
And now you're working with Michael. Can you tell us the difference?
Can I leave the room?
Not sure I understand that question. The difference between Michael and other directors is, first of all, he's the craziest man alive, and second of all, he's highly intense. We would work, you know, it was a surprising thing. Sometimes we'd be working and it'd be 12:30, which is just before lunch, and he'd say, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow." You know, he would shoot like quickly, intensely, and do these, you know, as I guess you've seen, you know, these wild moving shots that incorporate a lot of stuff in just, you know, one shot. and then he would move on. He has this thing of knowing exactly what he wants, and he's kind of got it edited in his head, and so it made for interesting short days and long nights.
Quel bummer. Madame?
Diane Carson, St. Louis Riverfront Times. Question for Mr. Cimino and the other actors, too, if they want to comment on it. As you know, there is a lot of resentment amongst Native Americans as being represented as tourist oddities, and a lot has been done on this, and I'm wondering how you tried to take that into consideration in your representation and actually into the acting presentation.
Well, I think for one thing, we made sure that we cast a Native American as the Navajo man, who's Victor's real Native American. And we had with us from the beginning constantly several Navajo advisors. In fact, John, early on in his training period, as he put it, in addition to learning how to break into cars, steal cars, and walk the walk and talk the talk, spent time on the reservation in Canyon de Chelly with Leon Skyhorse, one of our advisors, and Leon was with us every time we did anything remotely connected to the Navajo. The boys that interact with Woody in the scene involving the horses are real from Canyon de Chelly, the Canyon de Chelly area, are real Navajos, and we took care in giving them, especially the character portrayed by Talisa Soto, I think a strength and an intelligence and a sense of dignity, that one often doesn't see, and a woman to boot, that she's strong, tough, and attractive, and I think you feel that she and the Navajo medicine man are related, and that there is a sense of oneness with them. They had, and it's not very well known, but Native Americans, they have a great sense of humor. They love to laugh, and they love jokes. They love practical jokes. They always have, and we tried to show that. And I think the sermon that she delivers, Woody, outside the hogan of her grandfather is quite snappy. I don't think she holds back very much when she lets him have it. So I think, yes, we tried as much as we could within the context of this story, which is not about the Navajo per se, to honor their traditions and their feelings as much as we possibly could.
And just to add to that, I stayed on an Indian reservation with Leon Skyhorse for about a week and a half. And if he's watching this, I want to say Yat E Abine. Means good morning.
But just to follow up on this, thank you. Just to follow up on this lady's question, in doing so, in writing the characters, the Native American characters, or in directing and in casting them, have you met any sort of resistance that other directors may have encountered within the Hollywood system, where perhaps more recently either they play sort of mythical gurus, or there would have to be a saint very much like Sidney Poitier was a saint when he was the first leading black actor?
Well, possibly many of you, or some of you that I've done interviews with in the past know that years back I spent quite a bit of time on reservations, not on the Navajo reservation, but more on the Sioux or Dakota, Lakota, Nakota reservations in North and South Dakota. And so the struggles of Native Americans is not something that is new to me or a discovery on this film. It's something that I've been very much aware of and something that I've been struggling to make a movie about for a very long time. For me, the Native Americans are something quite special. And I think that the relationship that they have with the environment, if you will, or the landscape, or whatever you choose to call it, is something that white people have not yet learned in America. And it's something that we do need to learn. And I think that is something that is part of the transition that Woody undergoes as a character in this film, that the landscape itself, apart from the events that are unfolding, begin to have an effect on him. When he begins making fun of Blue's vision, for example, in the snakebite scene, my notion about that scene was that that place was so magnificent, and that it was his joking there was like blasphemy in a cathedral, if you will. And nature struck back at him in the form of a rattlesnake. I mean, it's a bit heavy-handed symbolism, but just by way of explaining the use of landscape, the landscape struck back at him. The landscape reacted to him. And he had to learn to look at the landscape in a new way. And at the end, I think, of the film, he comes to do that, not only to look at life in a new way, but at where we live in a new way as well. It's long-winded, but...
Non, justement. Je vais poser la question aux deux acteurs, et M. Cimino qui vient de répondre à peu près à ma question. Vous développez cette évolution spirituelle que le personnage de Blue possède, mais le docteur de la civilisation, non. Ce qui m'intéresse, c'est quand vous avez préparé, vécu, écrit, filmé, est-ce que vous-même avez acquis quelque chose de cette spiritualité? Avez-vous commencé à croire plus, surtout le docteur, dans cette spiritualité indienne de ces tribus qui vivent dans les montagnes?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a necessary transformation, certainly for the character, but, you know, for the actor and the actors in this. If you're out there and a part of that landscape, you know, for that amount of time, I think it really opens you up. And my perception is that most of the problems that society is dealing with today are a part of our dysfunctional relationship to nature. And I think that being out there opens you up. There's no way, it doesn't matter how closed off you are. If you spend enough time out there, it's going to open you up. If you spend enough time with the people we spent time with, I think it, you know, it opens you up.
Yeah. I would second that.
John?
I'll third it.
Sir?
I'll fourth it. I wasn't there, but...
Patrick Henne from FM Radio Network in Germany. I have a question to Mr. Cimino or the actors. As a half-breed or half-Navajo, Blue is torn between two cultures. And how far is the journey to the lake to be understood as a search for identity?
Well, I think that one has to look at modern-day Los Angeles as a starting point to that question. And Los Angeles today is such a polyglot culture. I mean, we've got Samoan communities, Korean communities, Vietnamese communities, Hispanic communities, black communities, all living chock-a-block next to one another. And for the most part, largely at war with one another. I mean, that's what the gang wars in LA are all about, difference, just difference. And you know, one of the motivating factors in making this picture was the quote that I gave you in the statement of intent for the festival magazine, which came from a young Crip who was in prison, who had killed several, you know, everybody we talked to is in for murder today. And the average age of murder has gone down from 14 to 11. So you've got an average age of 11-year-olds killing people on the street, both boys and girls. I'm sorry, I got off onto another track.
You were talking about the quote from the gang.
And the quote from this kid who was a Crip, which is a black gang, very large black gang, that our advisor, Marvin, had once been a member of, was that we all have to learn to get along with one another. Everybody's got to learn that everybody's got a heart. It's a line in the movie, I've got a heart just like you do. And, you know, I think it's a fundamental issue in the movie. You know, as the kids in jail said, the white guy, he's from the west side, he's got to learn something from the kid from the ghetto. Kid from the east side in the ghetto's got to learn something from the rich guy from the west side. If they learn something about each other, then that's a movie I could go pay money to see. Otherwise, what's the point? So hopefully, that's what we were able to do, is that each of these characters from two different aspects of Los Angeles society that live in very close proximity to one another come to not only learn about each other, but come to love one another. I mean, actually love one another. His worst nightmare becomes the person who not only he comes to love, but he saves his life, and he's a doctor and can't save his life. So there's kind of a supreme irony there as well. I've probably misused your question, but
the answer was lovely.
Sorry.
Monsieur?
Chris Burns, Associated Press. I hope I don't get bad karma for this. Your latest movie deals with powerful issues. It's a powerful movie, and
Thank you.
much like Deer Hunter. How much do you feel you put the experience of Heaven's Gate behind you in your eyes and in the eyes of the industry?
15 years worth
Do
of it.
you play golf?
No, I don't.
Oh, well, that explains the question. You see, if you play golf, you never worry about the hole you played. You always worry about the next hole.
Madame.
In a way, my question relates to the previous one. Well, it happens. You always were a very special voice among the American directors, Mr. Cimino, which we very much appreciated you in Europe also, or mainly, I don't know. Anyway, this is a sort of a Deer Hunter. I have the same opinion as my colleague, because it's the Vietnam at home in many ways.
Yes.
And I very much congratulate you the way you approach the subject. My question is related in one sense, because you stay in the spot of the critics' interest and the public interest, not doing so many films, you know. This is also special about you and your career. And I'd like to know exactly, well, you replied very cleverly with the golf, but I'd like to know your relation now with the Hollywood system, because you made, in a way, a super production, but it's a super production with a soul. It's not a pattern super production at all. And I want to know, how do you fit in now in this community, because Hollywood stays there and it's a community.
Before Michael answers,
Yeah.
if I may point out that the film starts with the Warner Brothers logo, and God knows how Hollywood Warner Brothers can be.
I know, because all you know, it's a small production houses. Why not, for instance? And it starts with 20th Century Fox, because they distribute it, but they are produced by small. Am I right?
Well, yes.
Anyway, well, if you'd like to go into this.
Well, you've made two statements. The first is that yes, it is like Deer Hunter in the sense that it is about a war, because Los Angeles is, in fact, a war zone. And it's an unacknowledged war zone. But most of the kids who are in jail, and almost all of them now are in for murder, boys and girls both. If you're not in jail for murder when you're 12 years old, you're not taken seriously among your peers. It's a sad comment, but it's absolutely true. And the age in California now where you can go to big-time prison, not children's prison, but real prison, has been lowered to 14, I believe, fairly recently. So it's a very serious war, and most of the killings and most of the reasons that these kids are in jail are for killing each other. And one has to, it's not as though they're going outside and killing civilians, if you will, but they are soldiers in different armies with different uniforms that we cannot recognize at war with one another. Now, with respect to making this movie and me making this movie within the system that you describe, you're right, I don't fit in it, and I never have fit in it. And the reason that this film has come to be made is because of one man, Arnon Milchan. Arnon Milchan, who I think most of you know, is an individualist, is a man who I think probably closer to the old Hollywood tycoons that had their own ideas about the kind of movies they wanted to make and made them, made decisions and made them, whether people wanted them to be made or not. And I think that Arnon, as Woody said, introduced him to the script, and he and his colleagues, David Madelon and Michael Nathanson, supported the venture, and then an amazing thing happened that during the writing of the script, which took a year, just in the writing, people like Billy Gerber at Warner Brothers were very supportive of the script as well. And somehow, by some magical process, everyone got swept up in it. And I think it was rather a miracle that it happened. You know, how often it happens, you know, well, we all know how rare it is. And so I applaud Arnon and his people for making it possible. Mind you, it was all terribly difficult. But because in August it will be 2 years that we've been working on this. And I mean 2 years, 7 days a week, nonstop. This past Christmas and New Year's, we were in the editing room, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Last Christmas, as John can tell you, we were casting in New York and Miami. His baby son was born on the day we met. We were distributing leaflets on street corners. I had kids coming into my office manacled to deputies. We were reading people in prisons. At night, I was writing on the back of casting photos, new scenes. It's in the middle of that, Woody was learning how to climb mountains, and John how to steal cars, and it's been quite a show behind the scenes. But because of Arnon, who cleared the way, it happened. It happened. It happened because one man made it possible. And I think that that's what it will take for me to continue to work. It's going to take one individual who for some reason will say, Michael, I want you to make this movie. And but it's certainly not a system.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.